Welcome to the show. And how did you find Bitcoin and how has it changed your life?
Uh, that's a big question if you take it all the way to the end, like the so I found my tech team back in kind of 2010, 2011 told me about it, and I ignored them. I was too busy and I ignored them. So everyone has that story of missing it at one point. I bought it first time in 2017, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. I just wanted to check it out. So bought a little bit in 2017, but I really started learning about it through writing my book. Um, and uh, and as I wrote my book and investigated kind of down to the sand what the existing financial system, how that was built, how it was constructed, and it was in opposition of human flourishing, human freedom, abundance. I, uh, I started to dig deeper into Bitcoin, and I started to take it a lot more seriously. So that's when I found it. That's when I wanted to, and then from that, um, even at the end of writing my book, I would say, and that was through 2019, um, probably late 2018, 2019. Um, at that time, I probably had a 5% probability that Bitcoin would at some point fail, and here's why I thought that. Um, there had never been a currency before that wasn't co-opted. There's nothing in history that has ever shown humans aren't kind of greedy enough to try to co-opt a currency, which makes sense because prices should fall. But if you could skim a little bit off the top of everybody and they didn't notice, they would uh, you would accrue a massive amount of power. What does that mean? Right. That means that we don't have in our history um, a word for what Bitcoin actually allows in the going forward. We don't. There's no capitalism, communism, all of these structures and all of the political structures and all of the different economic structures on top of what we had before were really control systems. They weren't free markets. They were control systems disguised as free markets. Some would operate as more free markets for a time. Some would, but then they would always revert to control structures. So I took that lens. If we'd never seen something before that could stay decentralized and secure and stop that power, then it was unlikely that something could in the future. And so that's the lens I went to Bitcoin, and through trying to disprove that, um, I came to the fact that Bitcoin is going to remain decentralized and secure. Now it's going to be a, um, a path along that, and there's a whole bunch of even right now some of the FUD that even Bitcoiners are falling into, the trap that they're falling into, as they as this is fought by major powers, is ongoing right now. But that's kind of how I looked at Bitcoin, and then I came to the conclusion it will stay decentralized and secure. And I moved most, if not all, of my time into it.
All right. Amazing. Amazing. And then regarding about you hear a lot of people that haven't done their homework on Bitcoin saying that things like, oh, the electricity's going to go down and the internet's going to go down. Yeah, I mean, you've done a lot of research into this now. Yeah, so you can explain that maybe to some of the viewers that might have that still uh, look about Bitcoin.
So Bitcoin is bounded by energy. It creates more abundant energy as you move through. If they shut the internet down, the internet would be rebuilt on top of Bitcoin faster. You just move the internet on top because it's literally it creates abundant energy and is bounded by that energy by its existence. The existing system is is abstracted away from energy. It's just pieces of paper that tell you how much energy is worth. This is actually bounded by it. So if that happened for some time, let's say the entire global energy grid went out, then would this work on ham radio? It would be clunky, and you could find, but it would still work. But if that uh, and that would slow it down, but everything would be stopped. And then when the internet booted back up, or when power booted back up, the entire energy grid, it would just refresh and it would work again. So nothing would stop. So if I look at that attack vector, that's a pretty small attack vector. That's not, I don't like, that's not even one that almost
Yeah.
registers as something is worth, sure, it's worth talking about, it's worth kind of for your own sense understanding, but that is a very small one compared to some of the others that would be ongoing.
Yeah, yeah. And kind of when people say that to me, I kind of say, well, if the internet goes down, I tell you, we're gonna have a whole lot more problems. You know, what I mean? And the system that controls everything is gonna have a whole lot more problems as well, because a lot of stuff is run on the internet, you know?
So it's at the highest level, you could say this, or the very highest level. Um, all of the things in our world, including the abstractions, we're the only species that we know of that knows that there's physics, that knows that there's that it's an abstraction we came up with to measure the universe that we can't even see. And so we build these models in our head, and these models that we form of the world, and then we measure the world against it, create everything in our lives. And that is a very human foundation that we've created. We've constructed the world we live in, including the inflation system, from our actions, from greed, fear, what we see. But most of that is in service of solving problems and creating more abundance for humans. The entire history of the world kind of gets better and better and better as we solve problems and do that process. So if you know today that Bitcoin is the only thing that's decentralized and secure, and you're solving these problems and moving all humans on the planet to live in a free market that is in service of all humans on the planet, then just like you're doing, Lawrence, just like I'm doing, you move more of your time to there, and you see more opportunities. And what's early in this path is more and more humans doing exactly what we're talking about, and they're joining a network that is an honest network that's in service of all of us. And as you join that network, you add your voice to it, you add your thoughts to it, you add your actions to it, and by that very function, that expands, and the dishonest network eventually collapses. So, or just not dishonest ledger collapses. So, if you believe in the human spirit of thriving, if you believe in free market, if you believe that ideas come from us and we're in charge of where we go with them, then Bitcoin's inevitable. If you believe you're controlled and everybody controls you and you live in that, then you're going to live in the other system for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, we have been, a lot of people can't get their head out of that, can they? They can't get their mind out of that and understand, because we've been living in so controlled systems for so long. Yeah, in different parts of the world, it's less controlled. We're kind of lucky a little bit we have, but we can see what's coming with all these corporations now that are trying to take over governments and countries and everything. Well, some of us can see what's actually coming. Yeah.
But again,
And
but you couldn't see, like, if you went to 2015, you couldn't see. If I went to 2015, I couldn't see. I was part of that
mm,
machine, and I was doing really well in that machine, and I didn't look. And just but and so there was others that we both stand on shoulders of that looked before us and kind of brought this along, and more are joining that every day. And so I guess the one thing I'd just say is, we all find this in our time, and
mhm.
every person those people who don't understand will eventually all be Bitcoiners, because they'll understand too.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
that's how early we are. It was just we're staggeringly early. And even in Bitcoin itself, there's a whole range of how deep you are under it. Some when you start even kind of start learning about it, you might use it as a hedge against it, but spend all of your time in the existing system. You described it before we started this interview. You've now moved all your time and energy into Bitcoin. So have I. And as you move down that ladder and you start to understand the depth of this and what it means to your life and what it means to how much more successful, how much more free, how much more abundance you feel in your life, what your connections look like, you just spend more time, and that's a very individual basis, and that change for every single person kind of happens slowly or quickly as they start to understand it. But we know, we can see it in all of the Bitcoiners we know. We can see it that it happens to literally everyone that goes down this path.
Yeah. Once they put the time into it, and it does take a little bit of time, doesn't it?
Because
To really
you,
start understanding, to get to where we are. And it probably took me 2.5 years to really get in. Some people might do it quicker. But I've done a lot anyway on my end, I
yeah,
think,
yeah, but
as we talked about.
yeah, and you said your story on it was in COVID, and when you realized that 20% of the money supply was printed in a year, and that was your okay. I need to look at money. What is money? If they can just create more money and prices go up relative to that money, then I need to look. That was your impetus to look because your business was shut down. You're frustrated
Hmm.
by the control system, and you wanted to understand that control system, what it looked like. But and then that took you deeper and deeper. Everybody has their story of why and when, and some people are still just, or they still fear it because they're living in the control system. But I'm very positive that this is inevitable
Hmm.
because we weren't meant to live in cages. And so all this it might be a different way to look at it. When the British Empire came after Gandhi and he held and he held the higher ground, it's really hard to use force to fight what's right. And so what Bitcoiners hold a higher ground. It's just an honest network. It's way more than that. How I
Hmm.
describe it. It's a open, decentralized, permissionless protocol bounded by energy, creating more energy abundance. Now that's because it's a protocol. It's the first layer of the new internet that's tied to energy. Then it's open and honest and permissionless for anybody to use. So Bitcoiners hold the higher ground. All of the force in the world to try to stop them from holding the higher ground can't stop them from holding the higher ground. And as this force gets it and all this kind of manipulated messages try to attack it in various ways, the energy it uses is bad for the planet, our systems will collapse, all of these things, more and more people, it actually, as all this force is used to try to control it, it brings on more Bitcoiners to understand it. It just
Yeah.
it's like a marketing machine. We don't need the marketing machine. The force trying to stop it is a marketing machine to bring this insight to more and more people. Your story is an example. I close all businesses. I print my money supply, and all of these people don't know what to do. They look and they
Hmm.
learn, and the honest network just expands by that. So the more force that's used against this, the faster people learn. So I'm wildly optimistic. I'm wildly optimistic for where this is going in freeing in connecting 8 billion people to 8 billion people on a network that's in service of all 8 billion of us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's truly, you're correct there. Like, yeah, people will find it in their own time. Uh, as we said, like, man, they're probably, and they're trapped in the old system. We found a new system. We're after getting out of that system now. we've done our homework on it, and it's so much more relief, and it's so much off, well, for me anyway, off my shoulders compared to what I felt like before.
You talk to Bitcoiners, you go to conferences, that's what they're feeling. They're feeling this love, their belonging, this path where everybody's connected, and at least you don't have to agree on everything else, but on everything. But the main values are the same. Like the critical values for human flourishing are similar, and there's all different sides of that, because how do we construct the world? A million different ideas, and the best ideas kind of win over a long course of time. That's how we construct the world, and that's what's happening in Bitcoin. A whole bunch of different ideas, but on a layer that's incorruptible.
Yeah, definitely. And when we talk to people and they say that like Bitcoin is risky and it's too volatile and things like that, because that's what they get sucked in with as well, you know. Well, what would you say to people about that? Like you and me know it's not risky. It's not the most unrisky thing out there when you zoom out, yeah, and you start looking at it. Yeah. I see it myself as like and I know there's a lot more to it. It's a savings technology that everybody should be learning about. Yeah.
Yeah, so I again, I start with a protocol. We don't see very many protocols in our life. Internet was a protocol. So we see more technologies. If you're measuring as a technology, and you think it's a blockchain or crypto or Web3, then you might be able to be convinced that there's other blockchains that are faster or this other thing. But if you understand it as a protocol, you realize that all of those other things are going to go to zero. Now, if you understand it's a protocol tied to energy and abundance and abundant energy, you realize it's essentially tethered to energy, and all energy is life. And that decentralization and security of that, where that energy is protecting this network all over the world, and then that energy is backed up by nodes. Like, do you run a node yourself?
At the moment, no, but I've been meaning to do it the last couple of weeks, and I will be doing it fairly soon.
Go run a node, because you add your voice to the network, and you add and then all of the miners have to, you're auditing what the entire open source code is doing every 10 minutes. You're auditing the entire time chain every 10 minutes, and you've added your voice to it securing that. So there's no individual actor that can change it, because it's these nodes are everywhere around the world, securing the rules we agreed to into this. And to change those rules, those people would have to come and change, and I would have to agree to the change. And I wouldn't agree to a change that's not in service of me or this decentralization security. And there's hundreds of thousands of Bitcoiners all over the world that are the same. So this is a really hard protocol to change.
Yeah. There's
Unless
over
it's
50,000 nodes, isn't it? If not more, like, isn't there?
It's probably more within Tor networks and likes. And so it's a really hard network to change. And then and you would only change if it's in service of us. So it would only change if, let's say, there's a quantum attack later on, and quantum becomes important. Then what would our nodes do? They would change the protocol to become quantum resistant. But it changes in service of us rather than against us. And running a node is an important part of that security model. So when you realize how this is built and constructed and it's tied to energy, how are you going to break through that energy? How are you going to break through all of those nodes that confirming the transactions on that energy, that they're all honest? It's operating honestly. You're not.
Yeah. It's virtually, I won't say impossible, but it is virtually. It's more or less, it's 99%, isn't it? 98% really impossible to break it.
Yeah. So now how would you? So so you can't on layer one, or it's virtually impossible to on
Yeah.
layer one. You could confuse people. You could try to essentially uh psyop attack where you're confused. FTX might have been that, right? You could
Mhm.
scare people, regulate, but even still, too many people, once too many people know an insight. I use Galileo as an example. Once he invented a telescope and looked outside the system everybody else was measuring from, and he knew that the church was wrong, that all the teachings were wrong, and nobody else knew because they were listening to that same story. It took 300 years, 300 and something years for the Catholic Church to admit Galileo was right. But other people knew because all they had to look out is a new telescope. And so what Bitcoin is a telescope to look outside the system into a new system. And every single person that is experiencing this knows knows the truth. Once they know the truth, they are unlikely to go back and live in a lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
And
so so that's spreading around the world.
it is,
um,
yeah.
and it's spreading around the world from more and more people. And so your podcast is sharing that knowledge to more and more people. Some of those people's lights will turn on. They'll look through the telescope. They'll join this, and this will move. This will keep marching forward.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of people out there, and I talk with a lot of people that know about sovereignty. Yeah. And a lot of people are starting to talk about sovereignty. But a lot of these sovereign people, they just can't get their head around Bitcoin, and they just think that it's from boards like the cabal or these people that control the world and everything. Sometimes for me, it's a bit frustrating that they can't see what I can see, but hopefully over time they will. Yeah.
Yeah, but why is it frustrating?
Because I know what I found out, and I kind of know I've learned a lot of uh, the truth that's out there. A lot of stuff that we were taught turns out to
Yeah.
be that it was actually all wrong, you know? And maybe some people looking at this mightn't understand what we're talking about. Yeah. But a lot of things that we were taught were actually wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of the point. This is the first time in human history we have something decentralized and secure. That means 5,000 years of human history. You've had essentially the same model of control systems tied to money, because if you could if you could cheat money, you could you could aggregate control by stealing a little bit from everyone else. Every model, every history book, every war that's ever been fought is based on that model. And all of us have read all the prior work. So all of the economists sitting on top of the system, all of the political commentaries sitting on top of this system, they've all lived in this system, and they go back to, how do you learn? You look backwards, and then you say, okay, does this match? And Bitcoin just broke 5,000 years of human evolution and progress against that system. So that would mean that from Bitcoin's perspective, or from your brain's perspective, how does your brain learn? Right, it's through your neurons firing. A lot of times they say neurons that fire together wire together. So if you've practiced and you've learned all of this your entire life, and your parents have, and their parents have, and that's what you then that what it means is you do not have the mental lattice. There's nothing to hang Bitcoin off of in your brain. It's a relearning. When you said you had to forget all of this, everyone
Hmm.
does, because
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
every
Yeah.
single person does. You have to forget everything you knew, because it's an entirely new model imposed against humanity. And you better learn the new model, because it changes everything forward. But if you what that would be really difficult, right? That would be because nobody has the mental lattice to understand Bitcoin until you do the work to understand Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
like
so
you
I
have
don't
to just
get
reprogram yourself kind of thing, don't you? You have to just kind
yeah.
of
And so
forget. And
and so
allow yourself to forget. Allow
yeah, so
yourself and be open to forgetting about what we were taught
yeah,
previously.
but imagine. And so why do you get frustrated about that? It's just people, because then you'd have to say people should have been frustrated with you in 2019 before you knew, right? Everybody's going to find it in their own time. The You found it in your own time. Everyone else is going to find it in their own time. But it's a transition similar. That's why I use Galileo as an example. He was right, but it took the world a long time to have enough telescopes to to move around from the control system that was telling people how the world worked to a new insight that showed people a greater truth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a great way of explaining it. All right. So over time, people will learn over
And
time. And that's
yeah,
all that's all we need.
and then
Like some people might be faster, some people might be slower, but everybody's gonna learn about this. Like most people have heard about it already, but they just haven't taken the time themselves, like we have, to go down the rabbit hole or go and
they're
learn
either
about it.
busy, fearful. That fear keeps them trapped in the existing system. Life is getting more expensive. They're turning to government, thinking somebody in the government can solve this from the same system. It gets worse, it gets worse, it gets worse, and they're stuck in that system. And if you're stuck in that system, then you fear paralyzes our ability to think broadly. So that fear, and that's actually why it's used as a control mechanism. More fear in the market, more war in the
Mhm.
market, more control in the market. More if you're looking on Google or YouTube or all the algorithms, what do? They drive that fear. They drive that
Mhm.
fear. As you slow down at a car crash, you slow down at a car crash to look as it captures your attention. And the more fearful you are, the more you stay stuck. It closes down your ability to think in these terms. And what Bitcoin is, Bitcoin's the antidote to that. But until you see it, you're stuck in the other system. So I don't. I guess when I think about this process, it's going to be a long process as each person goes through this process in their own mind and understands this. But why I'm so positive that in the process is because this is based on truth, hope, and abundance. And as people start to understand what that looks like, which is so different than the lives they're living right now, typically, um, they don't go back. Like, do
Yeah,
you know any? Do you
you
do you know
can't
any?
go back. I can't go back. I can't
Do
go
you
back.
do you know any Bitcoiners that go back? Do you know every time, like if prices fall, Bitcoiners just pull as much, they buy more Bitcoin as fast as they
Yeah,
can.
that's all we
So
do.
yeah, do you know
Yeah,
any Bitcoiners that go back and say, "Oh no, I don't." I don't know any. I know
yeah,
some that have tried to cheat Bitcoin and got liquidated. Um, I know some that have tried to be bigger than Bitcoin and been liquidated, but I don't know any that go back.
yeah. It's a great point. Yeah, it is. Yeah, and when I just think about it, anybody that I know that have started really getting into Bitcoin and see it as the savings technology and just see it as hope and our insurance and all so many things, we just they don't go back. We'll never go back to that. We can't. We just
and
can't.
there you go. That's why this continues to play out. And then if you realize that, then you're at the very earliest. When you look back at your life 10 years from now and you realize how much different and how much more powerful, how many more Bitcoiners are on, and how early we are in this, then instead of being frustrated, you get super excited and motivated, right? I'm not frustrated at all. I understand what this is, but I'm full of hope every day because we are so early, and what I see is going to expand across the world, and it's just very early in that path.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just as we talked, people just need to take the time themselves to, and a lot of people are stuck in the rat race or going around in circles, and it's the fiat system that does it to us. I was like that as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we're all like that. But it's the fiat, it's a system that we live in and the money that we use, and we're finding that now. you know, how much our lives are better with our own heads and our own future and everything that's happening to us.
Yeah. So one of the things, and I say on a lot of podcasts, so anybody that's listening to this would have heard this before, but if the natural state of the free market is deflation, because we choose things that give us more value and entrepreneurs solve problems. So so all of economics rides on what I'm just saying right now. Natural state of the market is a free market is deflation. We trade with people all over the world, and we invent new things to create more and more value for us. What that means is, as we do that, you have to have faster and faster deflation as prices fall to the marginal cost of production. In that world, today, prices would fall. I'm just guesstimating, you can't measure in it counterfactual, but the prices would fall by 5% a year for every human on the planet. Then the next year it might be 7.5 or 8%. Then the following year it'd be 15%. And as robots and AI do more of the work, it frees us to live in abundance faster and faster and faster. And every year, prices fall by a faster rate as more people move on an honest system that accrues the benefit of the work. Because remember, an entrepreneur cannot create value, or if you work for an entrepreneur, they cannot create value unless they deliver, or they cannot have success unless they deliver more than that was there before, more value, because you're the other part of you as a purchaser is the other part of that equation, and you choose things that give you more value. So that means on this system, prices have to continue to fall, and that's by the free market. It also means, as an extension or a derivative of what I just described, we've never lived in a truly free market. Never. We've always lived in a control system. And so, like I said before, some of the control systems have been more free. The Constitution enacted through a piece of paper a more free market, or a very free market, for some time, and it worked for some time until it was captured. And but they all get captured over time. And the rise of the U.S. as a superpower was because free markets are more productive than closed markets. And all of the people from Europe that moved to those free markets to create opportunity, and moved from all over the world to create opportunity, found extraordinary opportunity in that free market, which was the backbone of the United States' rise to a superpower, because free markets are massively more productive. But that means anything that stops that force is a control system and an illusion from pretending to act as a free market. And what you have in Bitcoin is you have the first time in history a free market imposing that over the world. And all you have to do, you don't have to wait for your country, you don't have to wait for a company to do this. All you have to do is move your time into it, and you see that experience. And it's and that means prices relative to Bitcoin will fall forever. And if you live in the control system, prices will rise forever.
Mm.
Because and when people are measuring Bitcoin price through a piece of paper that's really a control system, that they think Bitcoin price is going up. When you're measuring Bitcoin price against all other things, energy prices, house prices, food prices, all other things, you'll find all prices are falling forever.
Yeah, true. Yeah, because if you look at, let's say, the price of a house maybe 5 years ago or 4 years ago in Bitcoin, a house like, say, 350,000. You know what I mean? Say an average house in Ireland is about, say, 450. You know what I mean? A few years ago, you would have probably needed 15 or 20 Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Now, what do you need? Four.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
So the
yeah,
prices are getting
yeah.
lower.
All prices in all prices in Bitcoin measured against Bitcoin will fall forever, which makes perfect sense if it's imposing this free market discipline and prices fall to the marginal cost of production. The reason a house costs a lot of money today is because it was the only way to store your value against depreciating money. So people took more and more leverage, more and more risk to try to store their time, or their value of their life, in a house, because because if you held it in the bank, you would lose money. So then investors said, oh my God, if we hold it in the bank, we're going to lose money too. So we're going to buy more houses, and house prices accelerate. But they're actually not accelerating. They're only accelerating. The price is only rising versus the fiat currency that's being debased. And so it's created a monetary premium on a house versus a utility value. And when you create a monetary premium on a house, when it acts as an asset or a store of value that like a bank used to, then it's no longer a utility for a family to live in. Right? Then it's no longer
Yeah.
then the social construct starts breaking down because it looks like the only way to make enough money. And then everybody races in, and they're not actually making money, because if they sell their house later on, all of the goods and services with that money have also gone up in price because the money has lost value. That's so yes, a lot of people are stuck in that system. And what that means is a house is a terrible store of value. Well, it's the best store of value other than Bitcoin. But versus Bitcoin, what we just described is houses are falling to their utility value, and they'll continue to fall in price forever
Yeah.
against Bitcoin.
Well, property worked for some amount of time, but now we're going into the 21st century. So we have something better, I think, don't we?
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
it only
property,
it
gold,
only
all them
it,
other things worked for those times, I think. But we're going into a digital world, we're going into a digital age, you know.
it's more important. It's more important than that. It's not because of the age we're going into. It's the house value has risen exactly, well, in some of the most in top areas. It's over the last 100 years. It's grown by the exact rate as money supply growth, eight and a
Right.
half percent, 8.5%. All it's done is shown the debasement of currencies perfectly.
Yeah, because when I calculated from before, I was seeing that the real estate was going up 8 to 10% approximately. But sure, you have to hit it nail
It's going up exactly the
straight.
monetary supply
Yeah,
rate. Exactly it just matches it. So it's it it's a hedge against the monetary debasement as more and more people do that. But then you have tax. Then once you've done that, you have
of course.
taxes
Yes, everything else that
and
comes on top of that, then yeah. So you're
now
actually losing over
you're
time.
everyone's losing over time. And how's that happen? This state is getting bigger. It's a control system, and it has to get bigger and bigger. And it has to, how does it get bigger? It taxes you more to be able to take that back. First created the problem, and now taxes you back to create a bigger problem. It's just a giant control system. But it doesn't actually matter, because if because Bitcoin's repricing that too. It's repricing everything. If you want to measure Bitcoin in a piece of paper, and you think it's going up in price because you're measuring it in a piece of paper, you're welcome to. If the government wants to print 30% more currency and measure Bitcoin against that 30% more currency, they're welcome to. But it doesn't care. It's pricing, it's a free market force. The only thing outside of the system, especially if you store it securely yourself, decentralized and secure, and pull it off an exchange, if you do that, you're immune from all of this in the existing system. You are repricing the existing system and everything in it
Yeah, yeah. Because like when FTX and all these other exchanges went down, it didn't affect me at all. I was just
at
sitting there
all.
like looking at it,
That
what was going on. Like
Yeah,
I kind of I got a few red flags before, and I contacted a few people that I knew, and I asked them, "Have you got anything on this?" And they do, and I said, "Listen, you better get it off quickly." And I mean quickly, and I helped them to get it off and put it onto cold storage, uh, and hopefully they'll be thankful in a few years' time. Well, they are
yeah,
already thankful. You know,
yeah,
we saved them good few
yeah,
Bitcoin. You know,
yeah. And that's
uh,
the thing. There isn't anybody in Bitcoin, or most people in Bitcoin that like yourself, the whole FTX debacle, and which you knew would come. Just you have to say this: you can guarantee through our 5,000 years of history that if somebody could co-opt Bitcoin, they would. Right?
mhm.
So you can guarantee all of these kind of lies and cheating are going to come to try to expose you to Bitcoin. You're immune from them if you're in self-custody, and immune from them. But if you trust them because they can get you more money in Bitcoin, you're going to get wiped out. because you know those you know that people will cheat. So but trying to cheat an honest network like Bitcoin, you always get, every one of them gets wiped out.
Yeah, yeah. And it's correct. Even the likes of, the way people talk about staking and all this. And I say to people like, hang on a minute, Bitcoin is going up on average 40% a year. Some years it's doing more than that. Okay. Why would you risk all 100% of everything that you have to try and get an extra 2 or 3% from these staking
Yeah,
things? It doesn't make sense.
worse. And tie that, where does the interest come from? I know in the protocol my node doesn't say there's interest paid. So if that's the case, where does the interest come from? It comes from a Ponzi scheme,
Yeah,
right? It has to.
has to,
So
yeah.
yeah, so the natural state of the free market is deflation. With deflation, the real cost of debt gets higher and higher and higher. So if you take debt against that and you take leverage against that, that means your debt is getting more and more expensive relative to it. You better have the cash flow to be able to pay off that debt, because otherwise you're going to get liquidated. And if a company
Mhm.
says, hey, I'm going to pay you interest rate to be able to do this. By the way, the entire banking system worked like that. And
Yeah.
that's why, so the entire banking system used to hold gold 1 for 1. And then if you could hold gold 1 for 2, or a quarter of gold, then you could give more leverage, right? But then when people came back to try to get all their gold, it wasn't there, and you'd
Mhm.
have these bank runs. And then the government came in and said, "Oh, we'll protect the bank," but that
Mhm.
money wasn't there either. We just remove the gold totally, and we'll have this abstraction of it's just a credit-based system that has to grow forever because there's constantly a bank run. Um, and the money isn't actually there. There is no money there. It's just a credit note. And it requires more and more inflation to be able to survive. And so now you don't have free markets at all. They're just control systems driven by just a piece of paper or ledger entry that is a credit note. So if that's always existed, and always been a way to make more money because you can leverage this, and then if you're big enough in that system, then when it fails, if you're a critical part of that system, then and your executives are all making so much money on the way up, then the government has to come in and save you too, because
Mhm.
they can't let you fail because you're a critical part of the
Yeah.
infrastructure. So why do you think big corporations get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're more in tune, tied in with the governments? Because of this very, and why are all those donations tied to the top political parties? It's a, and you don't have to look at it as a, these are evil people. It's just a controls. It's just an incentive system driven to be able to keep the system going, which gets worse and worse and worse, all tied to the very same thing. So now when you compare Bitcoin, you realize that prices are falling against it. That means debt is getting more expensive against it and will collapse. If you take your Bitcoin into one of those companies that is saying, I'm going to give you uh, leverage on this, or I'm going to give you loans on this, I'd be very, very careful.
Definitely. Definitely since after everything that we've
Nobody,
seen in the last
no
2 years.
government, yeah, no government's coming to save you. No government's coming to
Definitely.
say to save you when you get wiped out, and by doing that.
Yeah, yeah. And that being said as well, what I mean, with what that could possibly happen in the future with all these banks as well, uh, I don't see
The
any
banks,
bailouts coming this time. There's more like bail-ins coming this time. And a lot
yeah,
of people still don't even understand that.
the banks are already insolvent. Everything is
Mm.
insolvent. The only reason all the asset prices are where they are is because people, those assets haven't been marked to market, because the debt underneath it is insolvent. The only reason the debt is solvent is because it has essentially a tether to government saying we'll bail it out, we'll print more money. And then where does the money come from printing more money? It comes from every person in the country. It steals more money faster through that process. So the only reason your house value, or your house before you sold it to buy Bitcoin, um, had that value is because of that implied guarantee that the government will backstop the bank and backstop the whole thing. Where does the implied guarantee come from? It does not come from taxes. It does not. It comes from printing more money to be able to make that house price go up relative to those currency units.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense when you start really looking into it and understanding what's really going on. Yeah, and unfortunately, there's another. Well, I can see it as if we're in a death spiral at the moment. It's a ticking time bomb. It's just a matter of time
Yeah,
when it's just going to happen.
the amount of money and liquidity that's going to come in the next, I would say probably within the next year, is going to melt people's faces, right? Because it has to, because otherwise, if it tightens for too long, you're starting to see this in Europe. You're starting to see credit markets seize. You're starting to see this in Japan. You're starting to see this in China, and you tipping to deflation. And as you tip to deflation, all of that credit that people, all of that wealth that is on top of that, that people think is wealth, it's a mirage because the deflation wipes out the credit, and it's a house of cards. And if you let that go on too far, then the spiral is so severe. It's Great Depression type of severity, globally, catastrophic, because every bank fails, and it's a cascade of dominoes that cause, and then people that thought they had that wealth, and the wealth is a mirage, and they can't sell their house, and they can't sell, and it just keeps on going throughout society. So you can guarantee that as this tips over, the amount of liquidity, it might get bad in the meantime, but the amount of liquidity that governments will, and why will governments do that? Because their citizens will force them to.
And more, and
But
just help them.
the citizens won't put up with. That's why when we think about this system, we have to think about us in the system. I often ask kind of YPO friends and everything else, at what point they think, because they think they live in a free market system, and they don't. I said if it's free market system and you know the system is naturally deflationary, everybody nods their head, yeah. And you live in this inflationary system, it's not free market, it's just based on more manipulation of money. So if you do believe you live in a free market system and prices should fall, at what point would you put up your hand when your assets, every one of your assets is falling at a 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%, 70%, 90%, 95%? When would you put up your hand to stop the bleeding as you got liquidated completely and every bank failed? And everybody puts up their hand. There would be marches on the street tomorrow if that was happening and every bank was failing. And if the government didn't print more money to be able to recapitalize, then that government would be thrown out, and a new government be formed to be able to take power to be able to do it. And where did the money come from? It came from you.
Yeah.
It's the so instead of instead of kind of this evil cabal that is driving this. This is just incentives, and the incentives are driven by us, and us spending more of our time within that system trying to eke out a living or to try to make enough money with that entire system is actually making it worse for all of us. And then the same thing, opposite thing is a mirror image in Bitcoin. More time, more energy in Bitcoin is making it better for all of us. So but it's just as this transitions, it's going to be really chaotic for a lot of people that don't know what we're talking about right now.
Yeah. So people, what was the last thing you want to say? Because I know we have a hard stop right now.
Yeah.
How do
No,
people
I'm
protect themselves?
yeah. Protect yourself by Bitcoin, but learn why, so you can
Yeah,
hold
learn
it with
first.
the cycles of you think it going up and down. Learn why, that when it goes down you'll want to buy more, and understand for your own reasons. And people in Bitcoin say don't trust, verify, for a reason. So you can do the work yourself. So to become not just financially secure, but understand where this is going. And then you'll want to, if here's what I'll end with. If you're spending 1% of your time in Bitcoin, spend 2%. If you're spending 2%, spend 4%. If you're spending 4%, spend 8%. Along the path, run a node, do more and more. Your life will just constantly get better. By that, you don't have to make a jump all the way to Bitcoin right away before you know. Start, and then expand that time. And expanding that time will be very valuable for you and the people you know.
Lovely. Perfect. Perfect. And if people want to get in touch with you, Jeff, how would they get in touch with you? Be
I
on
just
X or
jeffbooth.ca probably best. I spend most time on Nostr these days, not Twitter or anything else. And then, but any social media platform I'm on will be listed on not on my website. And please, if you see me somewhere else, it's not me. There's just
remember
too many.
that.
There's so many people trying to scam. So many people trying to scam people all over the place. I don't have an Instagram site. There's somebody with 21,000 followers on Instagram trying to take money from people. So just always check my website. If it's not listed there, it's not me.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Okay. Thank you. And we'll catch up
Oh,
soon again. Yeah.
sounds
Brilliant.
great. Thank you. See ya.